This is Penny Keener, Stampin' Up! Independent Demonstrator and the original Keener inker. Today we're going to be making an Ornate garden flower card using the Ornate style stamp set and the Itty Bitty birthday stamp set. We're going to be using the phrasing Let's Celebrate You. We're also going to be using dies, the Ornate layers. We're going to be using this border here, and then also the rectangle stitched, the small one for the wording. Cardstock we're using today is Old Olive and Whisper White. We're also going to be using the Jet Black Stays-On pad, watercolor pencils, and the blender pen, as well as the Wink of Stella clear brush. So to get started, we're going to be using the Stamparatus. I am using this for just about everything because you can position your stamp on there, and if you have multiple stamps, you can put more than one on at a time. So I am going to be using Stays On. Even though I'm using a red rubber stamp, I am still using a foam mat. Just raises up just a little, and I think the stamp connects better with the cardstock. So I'm going to take my Stays On ink pad. I'm going to make sure this is inked up really well. Because this is a larger stamp, sometimes it's harder to get a good image every time the first time, which again is one of the reasons we use the Stamparatus as well. So I'm going to apply even pressure and lift that up, and that looks pretty good. Let me move that aside. Now I'm going to use my watercolor pencils to color this. So I'm going to use my Old Olive watercolor pencil first and just do a leaf here. When I do this, I'm going to go ahead and do all of my one color at a time, and then come back and then do my blender pen. So, and I'm going to do a daisy just to show you how I'm doing one of each flower. So I'm going to do a yellow center, and then I'm going to leave these white. So I'm going to do a little gray kind of around the center to offer some shadowing for that. For one of these large flowers, I'm going to use the Melon Mambo, give it a nice pop of that bright pink. And with the watercolor pencils, if you notice, I am not coloring the whole thing in. That is one of the beautiful things about the watercolor pencils, is that we're going to use a blender pen. You can use an aqua painter to actually fill in this area. All right, so that's enough of that one for now, and then I'll do one of these little flowers, and so just a bright blue center, and then I'm just going to do the edges and kind of leave the center of that flower white. All right, so I have done one flower of each of my colors. When you're using a blender pen, each tip is just like a marker tip, and they're moist. You do want to make sure that's cleaned off from the last time it was used, because there's nothing worse than starting to work on a project and realizing that you're transferring ink from something else. So I'm just kind of smooth out those gray lines where I'm doing shadowing for just the white one. And then as you see, I'm going to clean that off in between each layer. Here I'm going to do a leaf. Clean it off, move to the next thing. So it doesn't take very much to kind of blend that color in, smooth out the lines. If there's like some white area right here, this will actually push some of the color around as well. And then I'm going to do my white flower, my little blue flower last. All right, so I'm going to do the little edge, and then just do the center a little bit. Now I want a little more detail added, so that's another nice thing about the watercolor pencils, is you can just keep adding layers to this. So I'm just going to add a little more detail to my leaf, just following the lines on the vein, and I want my Melon Mambo to be just a little bit brighter, so I'm going to add a little more pink to that. And then I'm not going to worry about using my blender pen to smooth that out anymore, because when I'm all done with all my coloring, I'm going to go over it with Wink of Stellar. So same thing, this is a moist tip, so you want to make sure that's cleaned off so you're not transferring in anything from the last project. Again, one color at a time. And I'm just going to go over the images. And because this is a wet tip, you see how that green where I did on the veins is kind of moving around a little as well, which is why I didn't have to go back over it with the blender pen. So do you know what it's like to get your teenage flower to do anything? It's like pollen teeth. That works for human teenagers too sometimes. Okay, so what that does, and hopefully this shows up, is it just gives a little bit of a glimmer to the project, a little bit of a sparkle. So after I'd finished all of that, this is what it's going to look like using the same colors. So I'm going to take my old olive cardstock, and I'm just going to fold that in half. I've already pre-scored it on my paper trimmer, but I'm going to get a nice crease with my bone folder. And I'm just going to use snail. When I'm using it, I'm trying to make sure that I don't do adhesive over the holes, because sometimes it kind of pokes through. And as I'm looking at this, one of the neat tools to use for this particular one, because you can see how it has that really detailed thing, is to use the take your pick tool die brush and pad. And as I was doing the snail on here, I saw where I needed to poke out one little thing, and now I can't see it. All right, must have fallen out while I was snailing the rest of it. All right, so I have this. I'm going to put it right onto the center of my card there. Then I'm going to push down where that snail is. It's called burnishing. Just make sure it adheres good. And then I'm going to add my wording, the Let's Celebrate You, and I've already put Stampin' Dimensionals on the back. All right, and I think I'm just going to put this down on the bottom, and then you can see that you can do so many different colors. This one here is done with the orange, and then the yellow daisies, and still with the blue flowers. And here's another example, even with some different colors as well. But this is a Let's Celebrate You, the Ornate Garden flower card with a little bit of shimmer, which I absolutely love. Please check out my website and subscribe to my channel for quick videos on how you can be a Keener inker too.